Today we're going to talk about teamwork. Now, everybody thinks they know what teamwork is all about. From an early age, we're taught there's no I in team and all that great stuff. But there's a big difference between cliches and business reality. So, to see what it's like in the real world, I went to Cannondale. I wanted to see how effective teamwork improves the design, manufacture, and marketing of their high-end, lightweight bikes. We spent some time watching how Cannondale revised their Jekyll model. Now, this is a serious bike for pros and weekend warriors alike. We started off talking to the people who make up Cannondale's R&D team.
I'm so nervous. There aren't people standing around with microphones and
cameras.
Act natural.
You're on.
Ron, we were looking at trying to drop a little bit of weight and grow the travel on the bike by about 15 to 20 millimeters. How'd we do?
We've increased the shock length in order to increase the travel and the bike from the old bike.
So the eye-to-eye effectively has changed, or we just changed the positioning of the threading?
A little of both. We made the shocks a little longer and we changed the position of the threads. The reason for doing both was then we could also have the option of putting coilover shocks on instead of just air shocks like we have now.
Excellent. Where'd we end up?
Weight-wise?
Yeah.
We lost about a quarter of a pound.
No drastic tubing changes in the three main tubes. No. And then the travel, where did we end up?
How much did I gain?
And be conservative.
We went from 115 millimeters to 130 millimeters of travel.
Okay. And then now with the coil, we're going to reduce that by?
It's going to be 115, so the same as the current bike with the coilover shock.
Great. Okay. That's pretty much on target.
Because Steve, the trend you've seen from the retailers and the consumers that people are looking for more travel?
Growing the travel by 10 to 15 to even 20 millimeters is definitely the way we wanted to go. And of course, being able to put the coil spring on allows us to penetrate a new price point, so we're right on target.
My name is Steve Metz, and my role on the Jekyll design team is as really the director of product management. We started with, to describe my job, it would be everything from deciding how to meet the customer's needs early on before we even thought about designing the bike, all the way through to picking the components that are going to go on that bike for the delivery of the bicycle, and then following that right into the hands of the consumer. This revision of the Jekyll has actually been in our minds for probably 9 months. We've been working on it. We've had prototypes for 3 to 4 months now, and we're really in the final stages of our destructive testing, and we'll be riding the prototypes that Ron brought up today.
The R&D team shares a specific vision for their product. They work collectively, and they enjoy open-ended discussions, but they never lose sight of the business aspect of their work. They know that the bike not only has to have a great design, it also has to sell.
Being part of a team is always, it's good and it's fun, but it's also, the best teams have a little bit of an adversarial relationship. I'm the one that's always trying to get the cost down. But we sell high-end bikes, and our engineers they're professionals, and they make a fantastic product. But I have to sometimes remind them that we're not making aerospace products, and that we do need to sell this to the general public.
You worried at all about the weight difference between these two shocks? This being, air shock being maybe 150 grams lighter than the coil shock?
Not at all. I mean, the issue before was that because of the unique design of the trunnion, we were forced into a position of using an air shock, which is what we would use if we were to ride the bike. But in order to get to a price point that makes it more affordable and increases our sales, obviously, because the bottom of the pyramid is a lot larger than the top, this is a really good thing. The increased weight is something that's, I think, expected at that price point.
And the factory's happy with all the production issues. I know, been working with them, and they're satisfied that it's going to be manufacturable and
uses a lot of the same fixtures as the current Jekyll, so it's actually very little work, and we'll be able to run them both simultaneously through the factory.
I'm John Horn. I'm the Research and Development Project Manager for the Cannondale Corporation, and what that means is that I'm responsible for overseeing and leading a team of 9 project engineers on the bicycle side, and establishing timelines for new projects that the engineers work on, establishing timelines for prototyping, and overseeing and integrating those projects into other departments here at Cannondale: sales, product development, marketing, etc.
Facilitation's a nice word for it. There are times when it really feels like enforcement. But there's a lot to be said for motivating my coworkers and myself with the positive aspects of what we do as opposed to with threats. Everyone is made to feel like the team
working together on this project really has a very important task at hand, and that the survival of the project and the viability of our company is dependent upon the innovation that we bring to market.
So Ron, now that we have this prototype here and we need to go into do some testing, what issues do you expect compared to the old frame here, based on some of the changes you made?
We've done testing on the head tubes, the new head tubes, and those work out well, so we don't expect to see any issues with that.
And you got some weight savings out of this new head tube, correct?
Yep. And that'll work on all of our bikes too, so we'll be able to take that weight savings on the full line.
And that'll also accept the new 1.5 headsets and
Yes.
reducing headsets, so we're in really good shape.
We've actually fixed some of the tight areas on this bike and have widened them up and made it better between the two.
Oh, that's good.
So
I
we've
can
actually
see that.
improved in that area. I guess you'd call me the lead designer on the Jekyll team. I kind of oversee the design of the frame, everything from concept when we first came up with the idea for what the new Jekyll was, all the way through production, so making sure everything goes into production smoothly. And that involves working with marketing and seeing what they want the bike to do, working with manufacturing to make sure that it's a bike that we could produce, working with testing to make sure it passes all our testing requirements, working with vendors to get the parts in, designing all the parts, doing the detailed prints of everything. You know, everything from the initial analysis through the final production. And like it's a lot of communication. I've found that you can't talk down to anybody on the team. You have to talk to everybody as an equal, whether it's a welder in the factory or whether it's the plant manager in the factory. You have to go in and tell them everything. You know, I'm doing this because of X, Y, and Z, and it's going to help me because of this. And, you know, I need you to weld it this certain way because of this, instead of just saying, do it my way because I'm the designer and that's the way I want it to be. Because then sometimes they'll show you something that you didn't realize, and you'll learn something. So,
Although Cannondale sometimes makes it seem easy, building an effective team is just as complex as putting together a top-of-the-line mountain bike. Not only did Cannondale learn that a horizontal special-purpose team can virtually ensure project success, they also found out that some of the traditional aspects of the business meeting had to be jettisoned.
Teamwork allows us to utilize the individual strengths that a group of people can bring to a project. It gives us diversity in ideas, in talents, and lets us really capitalize on the things that individuals can do best. Ron Litke, the design engineer that's in charge of actually the engineering behind the frame design, was the one who developed the idea and had the concept for the original Jekyll, and so it was natural to go to him for the follow-up, the revision of the frame. Steve Metz, in his role as product manager for the bicycle line, is responsible for the kind of big picture vision, deciding which goals are more important than others, how it's going to fit into the marketplace. And then Chris Peck, who was also sitting at the table, the lead engineer, has a lot to do with kind of the engineering realities of projects. As project manager, I'm responsible for timelines and for accountability on the projects, but I'm not trained as an engineer. So we go to Chris for his strengths in really evaluating what kinds of things are feasible from an engineering standpoint, and then get it through the system and flowing well.
Hey, those drawings that Mark and Plant sent up, were those just ideas those guys had? Because that's not where we're having the failures.
Mike wants to go back to one of the earlier earlier revs because it was easier manufacturing.
Instead of mud cutters, using Super V chainstay.
Those really big
Swing arm
ovals?
chainstay. Yeah, 1.5 inches.
We don't have a lot of formal meetings, and that's something that Joe Montgomery, the president of the company, really encourages much less confined communications, and really wants us to feel free to get up and go talk to someone else. The layout of our office is very open. Our cubicle walls are relatively low. You stand up and look across at someone else if you have a question, or walk over there. It's much more common for us to have meetings just gathering a group of people around someone's desk or in the hallway. It also allows people who may have input to ebb and flow in or out of the meeting as is appropriate. So we find it's a much more efficient way to get ideas across than to have a set group of people for a set amount of time.
Every team eventually faces conflicts, whether it's caused by disagreements over goals, communication breakdowns, personality clashes, or what have you. So it's important to learn how effective leadership can help resolve problems. Let's hear what R&D project manager John Horn has to say.
Everything I've spoken about so far about teamwork has generally been positive, and we feel very strongly that working with the team is done around here for a reason, because it gives us the best results. But certainly there are challenges to it. The biggest one of which is probably just we're all humans, and so we all have our own personalities, our own interests, and even among a group of people who work together and play together and generally are friends, those things come into conflict sometimes. And I think it's really a statement to the strength of our team here at Cannondale in the research and development area that we're able to resolve those, and people are able to recognize that their opinions may be different than those of others, and while those may sometimes come into conflict, I think we do a pretty good job of resolving those things through very open discussion and not holding back on expressing our feelings and escalating things to, if it's a conflict among two engineers, oftentimes they'll come to me and ask for resolution or at least mediation. And if we can't find a solution, we'll take it to someone else who might be able to offer some insight. So there are challenges that I think spring mostly just from the fact we're all people. But those are things that can be overcome for the greater good of the projects we're working on.
During our visit to Cannondale, we heard how an effective team is built, how it functions, and what steps a good leader can take to keep conflicts to a minimum. In short, good teamwork benefits the whole company. This is Biz TV. I'm Scott Winters. We'll see you next time.